Good morning. I'm going to have to take Sonia everywhere I go. That's one of the best introductions I've had, and certainly not deserving. But thank you for having me this morning. It's great to be here. Only Sonia can get me to Bakersfield this morning. Not that it's not wonderful, but it's getting a little warm out there. It's a little warmer than Long Beach right now. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I can't think of a better place to be than being with you all and talking about how we are going to change the California community college system for each and every Californian in this state. Where else should this state or this nation go to think about how to solve the challenges before us than the community colleges? 113 communities up and down this state. 113. Serving the needs of every type of individual in the middle of high schools, universities, public-private partners, municipalities. We are in the middle, and we are going to lead from the middle. Not to steal Laura Hope's thunder. But seriously, I think for far too long, we've been spectators. Spectators in terms of watching California grow up in front of us, watching our education partners decide on what they're going to do, wondering what the K-12 system is going to do, wondering if our university partners are going to let us in the room or not. We've been spectators. That day has ended. We are no longer going to be spectators. We are going to lead. Each and every one of you are going to lead. Why? Because that's what our state needs from us. That's what our communities need from us. That's what our nation needs from us right now. So, I know some of you are wondering, well, that's a little bit pie in the sky. We're just community colleges. Well, I hope to remove that part of your brain that keeps saying we're just community colleges. Okay? And why do I say that? There is no other institution better positioned to help California move forward than our 113 colleges. Think about the value that each of you and each of your colleges create every day. For far too long, we've measured value in terms of the top 10% of kids that we send to the most selective universities. That's not value. Value is how do you take the individuals in your community and put them in a position where they can now earn a better living, improve their family outcomes, participate in their community, and bring value to the community. That's the value that we create. Economic and social mobility. And that's what we're going to be focused on. So, before I talk specifically about guided pathways, let me set a little context. So, every time I come through Bakersfield, I can't help but think of a particular documentary that was done in 2011, First Generation. And I'm sure many of you have seen that. I've seen it at least 20 times. And it wakes me up every time I watch it. And if you haven't watched it, just Google it. It's available online. Watch it. It sets the stage for why we're here today. The film is about 4 high school students, one from Bakersfield, one from Lake Isabella, one from Long Beach, and one from LA, the Watts area. And it follows their path. And these are all 4 promising individuals, 4 promising students. Common denominator, they come from low-income families. They have a lack of people around them who understand how to navigate higher education. So this documentary just followed them through their struggles from high school and, for some of them, into college. And the thing that strikes me every single time is that this is just about 4 students. And each and every one of them had tremendous and has tremendous potential. But our system failed them. They didn't fail. We failed them. And it highlights the struggles of every student who comes to us without any real understanding of how to navigate college, without any real network to help them get through the struggles that they face, and they face many. You know, this one gal from Lake Isabella, she graduated top in her high school, had tons of opportunities to go to some of the best universities in the country, and she didn't go. It breaks your heart every time you see that. Why? Because of life, because of the lack of understanding, the lack of a network that provided that individual the guidance and the confidence that she could do it and that she deserved to do it. So, fast forward to today. The same thing is happening to thousands and thousands of students. The same thing happened to me in 1983. When I graduated from high school, I had opportunities to go to Pitzer College, to Brown University, and I didn't go. I had 2 years paid for at both Pitzer and Brown, and I didn't go for all the same reasons. So this experience keeps me up every single night, because it is not just 4 individuals that were highlighted in a movie or 1 individual that's standing up here today. It is thousands and thousands of individuals who are trying to realize their potential, and our systems keep losing them. Think about the potential that could have been unlocked for the state of California and for the nation if we would have been having this same conversation in 2011 or 2007 or 1999. And I don't mean to couch this in a way that is offensive to the people who work in the system, because no one, except for maybe 1 or 2 people at every college, no one gets up in the morning, comes to work, and says, "How can I fail students today?" And I don't know about your college, but there was at least 1 or 2 at Long Beach City College about that. I won't name names. He retired from the math department. It could have been English. It could have been any discipline. I'd always go to him and say, "Professor so-and-so, how can it be that only 14% of your students pass?" That's my job, President Oakley. I'm here to ensure that only the best get through. I still remember those words. I still struggle to understand that concept. And you know, like many of you had the same experience. You know, when I was at, anybody here from Golden West College? Okay, I can pick on Golden West. Too bad, Wes. I'm going to pick on your college. I get to speak at Golden West on Thursday, but so I can pick on them today. So they're my alma mater. I found Golden West College, and Golden West College put me on this stage today. But, you know, I had the experience, just like many of our students. You know, I changed majors about 4 times. At one point, I wanted to be a doctor, then I wanted to be a chemist, then, you know, certainly the last thing I wanted to be was a college president, but that's where I wound up. But my experience was, when I thought I wanted to be a chemist, I had gotten done with general chemistry. I knew the chemistry professors very well because I would hang out there a lot. And one day, after I enrolled for organic chemistry, my professor, Dr. Stan Winter, came to me, pulled me aside, and said, "Eloy, I need you to drop my class." "What the hell are you talking about, Dr. Winter?" And of course, I was a returning vet 2 years after the Army, so, I thought, if I can survive 4 years in the Army, I can survive your class, Dr. Winter. He said, "Nope, there is no way you are going to pass my class. I need you to take another professor, because what I'm going to demand of you is something that I don't think you can achieve. The amount of time and the amount of hours you're going to put into this class, I don't think you can achieve, and I don't want to see you fail." I said, "Thank you, Dr. Winter. Thank you for that advice." So, of course, I showed up to his class. And yes, I did pass his class. But those experiences happen all the time. And it's not because Dr. Winter, and I love Stan, I wouldn't be here but for that. Because he pissed me off so much, I thought, I am going to become the chancellor of the California Community Colleges one of these days. And he's lucky I never became president of Golden West College. And not to digress, but the funny thing about that story is the counselor, Susan Ryder, who took me in and gave me a path to transfer to UC Irvine, who took the time to understand who I was and what I was trying to accomplish and where I was in life, gave me a path to UC Irvine. That counselor was married to Stan Winter, is married to Stan Winter. So I was shaped by that family, very much so. And it's fortunate for all of our counselors here that I ran into Susan Ryder, because she gave me a love for great counselors that I will never forget. So I joke about this experience because, we try to put into context and we try to understand that we can relate to. And it's very difficult. I spent nearly 15 years at Long Beach City College, and it's a big college, and it's a complex college. It's a complex community. And yet, it does wonderful things every single day. But sometimes it does it in spite of itself or in spite of the system. It does it because there are tremendously wonderful people working hard every single day, trying to reach out to individual students. And yes, they reach out and grab some of them. They grabbed me. I was lucky. But sometimes we don't grab them all. And so we have to think about this in terms of how do we make each and every one of those great people on 113 campuses reach more students, help more students, guide more students, to ensure that it isn't about who is lucky and who is not lucky, okay? This shouldn't be about luck. I come to my job every day because I was lucky and I shouldn't have had to be lucky. Because if I could make it, there are millions of students who have gone through our system that didn't and deserve to have made it. Because I guarantee you, if you go to my high school and ask my classmates whether or not I'd be here right now, they would laugh at you. Their first question would be, when did he get out of jail? I'll let you figure out whether that's a joke or not. It's too late. I've gotten the job now. It's too late to bring up the past. So what I'd like you to do today, and I'm not going to sit here and give you the nuts and bolts of guided pathways. I am going to spend a little bit of time talking about, from the Chancellor's Office perspective, what we want to see, what we're trying to get to, and what we see going forward into the future. But you've got some great people here that are going to walk you through the nuts and bolts about what all this means. But if you break it down very simply, all it means is that we're going to be intentional. We're going to be very intentional about where we put our resources, what drives our decision making. We're going to be very intentional that every single student who walks into our campus, and those who are even thinking about walking onto our campus, deserve the greatest opportunity possible to succeed. Because you all know, again, we've been very passive in many ways. We sit back, we wait for the students to come to us. When they stop coming to us, we put ads on the back of buses and say, "Come to us." And that's the way we work. That all has to end. We have to become very intentional about who we're serving and why we're serving them, and then how we're organized to best serve them. And that's going to require courageous conversations on each and every one of your campuses. What Guided Pathways is all about is giving you the tools and the freedom to have those courageous conversations on your campuses. And why are they courageous conversations? You all have sat in meetings, I'm sure, on your campuses. I've sat in way too many. And the easiest thing to do is just continue to do what we've always done and explain to ourselves why we can't do something different. Those days have to end, folks. Our system has served our state very well, but we have reached a point in time that we can no longer continue to serve the needs of the state in the way that we're organized. That's not a knock on any of you, our system, our leadership. That just speaks to the fact that we have to practice what we preach. We try to teach our students to adapt to the changing nature of the economy, when we have to look at ourselves and adapt to the changing nature of the economy. The best way to serve our students is for us to practice what we preach, and for us to take a hard look at ourselves, to look at the data in a way that is not, unfortunately, many people now look at data and are just numb to the data. Okay? We've got 8% of our African American students completing a credential within 6 years. We all moan and move on with our lives. We have to change that dynamic. That interface between our eyes and that data has to change. Instead of the moaning, we have to collectively get together and figure out what actions we are going to take and how we're going to intentionally try to change the trajectory of that group of students. That's going to require us to have systems in place that allow us to clearly see the momentum and the movement of our students, all the way from K-12 through transfer or into the workforce. That's going to require us to ask difficult questions about where students are getting stuck, and not look at it as, if I'm in the English department, and clearly I'm seeing a challenge in terms of the number of students trying to get through to complete a gateway course, we can't be in the mode anymore where our first reaction is to be defensive. Our first reaction should be to ask more questions. Okay, and I want you all to have the freedom to ask and ask and ask those questions. Okay? That's what this is all about. To provide consistent data, to prod us to ask questions. We will not get this perfect the first day out, or the second day, or the third day, or ever. This work never ends. But we have to have a system in place where we continuously strive to improve our outcomes, and that we feel that we are in an environment where we are safe to raise our hand in a committee and ask the simple, basic questions. Why are our students failing in this course? Why are they having a hard time enrolling in college-level courses out of high school? And what are we going to do about it? And have the courage to try to try something. We have a wealth of information at our fingertips. The question here isn't, do we know what we need to do? No, we know what we need to do. There's lots of evidence of what can help move the needle. The question becomes, do we have the courage to implement it? And do we have the systems in place to evaluate it? And do we have the opportunity to continue to improve on it? You know, I've heard far too many times in the thousands of committee meetings that I've sat in that somebody introduces an idea and the first reaction is, well, that's not going to work. Our funding formula doesn't support that. Our curriculum process doesn't support that. Our this or our that doesn't support that. I want you to challenge those notions and force the Chancellor's office to rethink the way it's organized. Okay? Yes, we have a funding formula that is in statute. I know, I've been railing against that funding formula since I was a young child. But what does it take for us to really change it? It takes the courage and understanding that yes, we recognize, one, that particular regulation or that particular model doesn't serve our students anymore, and two, we're willing to think about something different. So, those are the conversations that we need to have every day that we come to work. And there are going to be days when we all get frustrated for one thing or another and think, this is moving too slow. But if we keep pushing a little bit every day, in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, we'll be able to look in the rearview mirror and see a very different landscape than when we first started on this journey. So, the Chancellor isn't going to change the situation. The Chancellor's office is not going to change the situation. You are going to change the situation. You are the individuals in the 113 colleges who are going to change the situation. My job is to try to create an environment that encourages you and supports you to make that change. Okay? To try to find the resources you need, to direct them in the places you need them directed in, to change regulation to support what you're trying to accomplish, to keep the legislature out of your business. That'll be the hardest part of this. And the best way to keep the legislature out of our business is to show improvement. Bottom line. Many of you saw an article by Larry Gordon, who's a very competent and trusted education writer. He wrote for the Times for many years, covered the UC, and now he's writing for EdSource. He spent about 3 weeks looking at the Student Success Act from 2012. And he took a hard look at how much money has been invested in the system after the Student Success Act. And then he asked the basic question, how have things improved? And I looked at Larry, and, he already knew the answer to that question because he had looked at our data, our scorecard. And I said, Larry, all you can see today is this scorecard that we have that shows what our 6-year cohorts are doing. That is the only story we can tell today. So I can understand how you're going to look at this and be very skeptical about whether or not the billions of dollars that have been invested have been worth it. Because according to those numbers, we've only moved the needle maybe 1 or 2%. But the story I can't tell you is how things are moving every day on the ground. And students are progressing faster and better on the ground. We can't tell that story right now. So, the best way for us to communicate to the legislature and, by proxy, communicate to the people of California is by us coming together, creating a system that clearly shows how we're going to measure progress on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and be able to communicate that success to the legislature. Because obviously if we wait for the 6-year cohort rate of the students that we actually measure to change significantly, it's going to take us several more years. So this is why this Guided Pathways initiative is so important in my mind. It gives us an opportunity to organize ourselves in a way that we can tell a much better story to the people of California about what's really happening on the ground and how we actually intend to move it. It gives us that unifying opportunity, that rallying point, those key sets of performance indicators that we all can clearly articulate about what's happening to our students. And I want to be in a position 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when I'm asked to come back and testify to the legislature, I want to be able to clearly say how big of an impact those dollars have made. And you know what? The legislature deserves that. They have invested a tremendous amount of money in us. We may not always appreciate it or feel it because we're digging out of a hole in the recession. But think about how much money has been invested. Excuse me. Everything from the Career Pathways Trust Fund to Triple SP, equity, I mean, you name it. There have literally been billions of dollars invested in improving student outcomes. And the governor and the legislature have had tremendous confidence in you, in us. We have to deliver on that promise. And I know that we can. So, Guided Pathways is really all about organizing ourselves, having some key technical knowledge on what works on the ground based on the great work of a lot of people throughout the country, what helps colleges move the needle most, what kind of questions should we be asking, how should we be looking at the data, and focus on data that matters. You know, I've sat in far too many board meetings where, you know, we just show all the data available for all of our students, and the board just sits there with a glazed look on their face that, okay. We have to focus our efforts much more than we have in the past. We have to really focus on those areas that are going to make the biggest difference to our community. And that could be different in Bakersfield than College of the Siskiyous, than Long Beach, than in Chula Vista. So Guided Pathways is also not designed to create a one-size-fits-all for every community college in the state. It is a common way of looking at things. But what you're looking at in 113 colleges is always going to be a little different. And so, thank you. And so, this is designed to also be very individualized to your community. The students that are struggling in your community, whether incoming freshmen, whether working age adults, displaced workers, those are the students that we need to be looking at, and that will be different in 113 communities. So, you know, don't fall into the trap that we fall into a lot, that this is some big top-down approach. This is not a top-down approach. This is a bottom-up approach. The only thing coming from the top is structure, an organization, key performance indicators so we can look across the systems consistently, a voice, a rallying point to organize ourselves, and technical assistance to help train you all and your colleagues on how to implement this in the best way possible. That's the only thing coming from the top. The Chancellor's office is not a college. The Chancellor's office doesn't graduate anyone. The Chancellor's office is not going to sit in your meetings. I'm going to make sure of that. I have no desire. It's the best thing about being Chancellor. I don't have to sit in another planning meeting on a campus again. Anybody here from Long Beach? I'm just kidding. I love sitting in our meetings. No, but seriously, the work happens on the ground. You guys are the work. So, in any case, my goal is to create a system and environment where you have a chance to do what you do best, to give you the tools that you need, the technical assistance, the resources to make it happen. Will it always be perfect? No. We're inheriting a system that is very stagnant, that's very rigid, and it's going to be up to all of us to change that rigidity, to be more flexible. And it will happen over time. It's already happening now. So, what do I see going forward in the future? You know, a lot of people have asked me, well, okay, so what happens after the $150 million are allocated this year? What now? What now? What now is up to you all. Okay? Again, the Chancellor's office is not going to solve this problem. You are. So, the what now is we're going to try and give you the tools to help organize yourselves, to take advantage of the investment that has been made, to help you understand where you're at today and how you can move the needle going forward, and then to reward you in future years. So in future years, you know, the $150 million is not here to provide you a source of revenue going forward. The $150 million is here to help us organize this. And then from there, we're going to have to follow up every time we issue a grant, an award, we look at our funding formula. It's got to be tied to and support the work that you're doing in a way that's intentional and in a way that helps you achieve the goals that we want to see you achieve. So that's the what's next. Okay, there's not going to be all sorts of other guided pathway awards in the future. It's going to be everything is awarded to support the work that you're doing. Okay? And let me pause on that because most people in our system aren't used to thinking that way. As far as I'm concerned, you have the money in your pocket now to serve your students. The question is, how are you going to use that money? And how are we going to organize ourselves? So in future years, we're going to look at the money that's available to allocate to the colleges. And we're going to look at what we're trying to accomplish with guided pathways and the behaviors that we want to reward and support. And we're going to try to shift those resources to support you. You know, I would love to see a point in time in the future where we don't have 10 different funding sources, we have one funding source. And that one funding source is for the explicit purpose of increasing student outcomes. Will we get there tomorrow? No. But what you will see is intentional behavior from the Chancellor's office that drives us in that direction. And that's going to make some of you, some of us, uncomfortable. But you know what? It's time we get a little uncomfortable. Okay? And, you know, again, this is not a jab at any one part of our system. This is a jab at the entire system. Again, no one comes to work thinking, how am I going to fail students today? It is the system and the way it's designed that allows for this failure. We have the greatest faculty, the most caring, committed faculty in the country. We have some of the best and greatest classified staff who work their butts off every single day to make our colleges the great colleges that they are and the welcoming places that they are for our students. We have managers, supervisors, and administrators who all they care about is how can I move my department, my division, my college forward. So, it isn't the individuals that are failing our students. It is the system that is failing the students. So we can't take that personal. We just have to accept that we, as community college leaders, are responsible for now evolving that organization and meeting the students' needs where they're at. So, it's going to take us, when we leave this beautiful day in Bakersfield, and go drive back to the Bay Area or to the Central Valley or to, you know, the sticks in the far north or the mess of Southern California or even some of you all the way back down to Chula Vista. It's going to take us to go right to work and push every single day and to build an army on your campus focused on this work. Focused. That is going to be the word for the next several years. Focus. Okay? And that is not something our system has always done well. And why? Because we want to support every need of every student in our community. And that's a wonderful part of our mission. I am proud to always say that we admit the top 100% of students on each and every one of our campuses. And I'll tell you, that was a joke 10 years ago. Today, it's seen as the greatest thing that we could ever do. You know, I spent a little time with the UC, and I joke with them all the time. And for the first time in my career, the UC is jealous of the community colleges. But it's going to take us to do this work every day. This is not going to be easy. You know, we're going to have a good time today. But the work that's ahead of us will not always be good times. And I need to work with my colleagues, college presidents, the district CEOs, the faculty leadership, the labor leadership. We need to create an environment where we make it easier for you to make mistakes, to try things out, to have difficult conversations. You know, that's always been a barrier to making change on our campuses. This notion that, you know, if I try something and I fail, I'm going to risk losing my credibility or risk losing funding. So we don't like to try. We don't like to take risk. We have regulated most of the risk out of our system. We need to bring that back. That was a hallmark of California community colleges in the 60s and the 70s. That's how Coastline was created. That's how most of the founding colleges for the League of Innovation were California colleges. We were leading the nation in innovation. We're going to get back to that leadership again. We're going to encourage innovation. We're going to try to do our best to relieve you of the regulatory burdens that exist. Not all of them. Okay? Don't anybody ask me, when are we going to get rid of the 50% law? Okay, that's not, okay. Let's not think about that right now. Let's set that aside. Because the reality is, that's a crutch that we use. You know, my colleagues, the CEOs, I love to hear them moan all the time, you know, if only we could change the 50% law. Be careful what you ask for. We change the 50% law and our numbers don't move, boy, we're really going to have egg on our face. So don't let any of those excuses get in your way. There will never be a point in time in the future where there is all regulations are gone and you have enough money to do everything you want. That day will never come. Will it get better? Yes. But there will always be things in your way. But that just means you have to find a way around them to better serve our students, because we have to put them in the center. Our organizations should be about them, not about us. And that's going to be a cultural shift that I hope begins today. And I know for those of you who are here, I'm speaking to the choir. But you know, as I've said, and you know, I was at a speech once, and it struck me. You know, the speaker said, every choir needs a good sermon from time to time. Okay? So I need this choir to go back and get on your soapbox every day. Okay? The next time we meet, this room should be double, and then triple, and then every one of our 113 colleges should be rowing in the same direction. In their individual ways, serving their individual communities, but all in the same direction. So I want to thank you all for being here today on behalf of our 2.12 million students. And by the way, that's a great number, but what does that mean? I mean, okay, we serve a lot of students. I want to be able to celebrate how well we serve those students. And the reality is we could be serving 4 million students. We could be serving 5 million students. That's how many students need us. And so it's up to us to find more and better ways to reach those students. And we're gonna go on this journey, and it'll be bumpy sometimes. Sometimes we'll go in the wrong direction. Sometimes we'll make one constituency or another upset, but we'll get through it. Because at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about our students. And they deserve us being uncomfortable. They deserve us having difficult conversations. And they deserve us taking a hard look in the mirror and asking questions of ourselves as to how we better serve them. And we will get there. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think we could get there. Okay? I didn't give up a good job in Long Beach to take a big pay cut in Sacramento, and because I thought it was going to do more of the same. We're not going to do more of the same. We can't. What is the future look like? Well, that will be determined by you all. We can set the parameters, we can set a structure in motion, but it'll be up to you all to tell us in the Chancellor's office what is really working and what we need to do more of. So I look forward to hearing from all the colleges that are represented today. Tell your friends from other colleges who are not here that we're going to allocate some additional funds to the colleges that were here. Just kidding. But I did tell Sonia to give me the list of who's here. So I'd love to answer any questions that you have before I hand it over to my good friend Laura Hope, who will actually tell you what we are going to do. But any questions from you all about where we're going, what we're doing, what this is all about, and what the Chancellor's office is doing? Yes.
So if Bakersfield College decides that we have a student population that really needs assistance, and Long Beach doesn't have that student population.
Uh-huh.
So we start focusing on that population, and when we really get awarded, suddenly Long Beach has that student population, but they didn't set it into their budgetary needs.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be in the future able to suddenly shift gears and focus on a brand new population that never existed?
So, that question gets to the heart of what our community colleges were designed to do. Our community colleges were designed to adapt and change as best as possible to meet the needs of our communities. And so, yes, Bakersfield College should be rewarded for supporting the needs of the students that exist in their community, and so should Long Beach. And Long Beach, that's not too far of a stretch. I grew up in Southern California, and the Long Beach I knew in the 1990s was very different than the Long Beach I worked in the mid-2000s. Had a tremendous demographic shift. Long Beach is the home, still is the home of George Deukmejian, very conservative white community built on the back of McDonnell Douglas in the Long Beach Naval Shipyard. Very middle class. That Long Beach no longer exists. It is predominantly Hispanic, Latino. It is predominantly low income now. The Long Beach Unified School District is about 90% diverse. Long Beach City College is about 83% diverse. Long Beach changed dramatically in a 20-year period. So that is not an unusual circumstance for our community colleges. So yes, it's up to you all to figure out what are the needs of your community. Who is not being served? Where is there disproportionate impact? What groups of individuals need us the most at any particular time? And we should have the ability to look at that every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, and adjust ourselves to serve those needs. And so my hope is that we can create a system that continues to evolve to support and reward filling those needs. So, the demographics you have today, whether you're at Bakersfield, Long Beach, or wherever, is going to change. That we know. And even if, you predominantly serve a community of Mexican descent, tomorrow it'll be a community of Honduran descent or Colombian descent, and those are very different communities. We may all look brown, but we're different. And the economic circumstances are different. So we need to have the tools in place to be able to measure those changes and adjust. And look, at the end of the day, you can tell a college's priorities by how their budget is allocated. So we need to ensure that our budget reflects the priorities of our community. And we need to have a system that adjusts for that. Is it working today? No. We have a funding formula that only supports growth in enrollment. Regardless of what kind of enrollment, it supports one type of outcome. We have to evolve that system to support different types of outcomes. Maybe your community has a very low high school participation rate, K-12 population is declining, but you have a tremendously diverse working age adult population that's been displaced by the economy. Our colleges should have the ability to shift their enrollment strategy to reach that different kind of community and create programs that serve them and meet those students where they're at. We can't just continue to operate the way we operate and expect working age adults to just enroll like our freshman students enroll today. I mean, think about the logic of that. That's just craziness. We have to adapt to that, and so that's part of the work that we need to do going forward. I know that was a long answer to your question, but it's a good question, and it illustrates the changes that we need to make. Any other questions? Yes?
Is there a space in all of this for our non-critical? Can you use the microphone?
Sure.
Because
Yes. So for our viewers, the millions of Americans watching this morning,
is there any space in all of this for our non-credit population?
is there any space for this for a non-credit population? Why is there a difference in population? I mean, think about, and that's a good question, but think about that question. Step back. Just as you were teaching a class and asking your students to think about the question you just asked. Why is there a difference in the population based on the way we segregate them? They all are looking for an opportunity to learn and to better their lives. Non-credit, not for credit, credit, what does it matter? We've created this convoluted, crazy system that creates silos on our campuses and competing missions. That we look, that faculty would feel threatened by a conversation about increasing non-for-credit or non-credit offerings. Think about what system we've created that creates that sort of competition. When the reality is we're trying to serve a need of a community. So, is there room? There's got to be room. We're serving our community. We're not serving only slivers of the community that we think fit into our model. We've got to change the model to ensure that we meet students where they're at. That is the value of our colleges, economic and social mobility. And we've got to push ourselves to rethink the box that we've created for ourselves. Because that box doesn't fit most of the students that need us. So when we talk about reimagining the future, this is part of that reimagining. Looking ourselves in the mirror and saying, how did we come to segregate all these different types of students? And think about how we value them. We give, $6,000 something for a credit student and X number of dollars for a non-credit enhanced student and almost nothing to a regular non-credit student and, God forbid we serve non-for-credit students. That's craziness. And it's about time we call it what it is. Does that mean we have an answer for it, or will it be an easy answer? No. But it begins with asking the right questions and demanding an answer, and then forcing us to figure out how we're going to change it. So, thank you for that question. And I'm sure Sonia will cut me off when it's time.
Just as one of your beloved MCs, I wanted to ask you to wait till the microphone gets to you. I see we've got one because we want people to be able to hear on the live feed. And if you have a question, we've got about a little less than 20 minutes left for questions. So if you have one, you also have note cards. And if you want to write that down, if you think you may not get to the microphone, pass those on over. Our runners will pick those up. And Laura and I will work together to sort through those and make sure that as many get asked as possible. So wait for the microphone, write your question down, a little less than 20 minutes. Let's get as much in as we can.
Hi, I'm Richard McCrow from Bakersfield College, all the way up here in the back. This is where we sit when we want to do work and those kinds of things. So, at the
Sonia
deck
put
plate,
you all the way in the back, huh?
Yeah. At the deck plate, and that goes back to my Navy career, down at the deck plate where we're working, a lot of times we'll interpret policy and law to best serve our students. And a lot of times it's different from the way things have been in the past. But we know it's the right thing, but a lot of people still feel uncomfortable with that, and so we're sort of forced into pushing it up the chain of command.
Right.
And whether it just gets at our local district but keeps going up, it just seems as the question gets higher and higher, the conservative answer starts going backwards, and we usually end up with that no. And it can be extremely frustrating when you know you're trying to do the right thing. I want to get your thoughts on that. And also, can you talk a little bit about courage and saying when you're interpreting something that's right for the students, give us that sort of prompt to move forward and take that risk?
Sure. Well, that's a good analogy. And using another military analogy, the most elite units are given almost complete freedom when they're on the ground to improvise and to figure out how to accomplish the mission. This is our elite unit in this room. My job is to try to create a system that encourages and supports the risk-taking that you're talking about, the courageous conversations that we need to have. Now, that doesn't mean that every time your committee, your college, your dean, your vice president, or your president says, we can't do that, that doesn't mean that, now you're going to pick at the college, yell at the board. You may have to do that eventually, but I wouldn't encourage it. But that does mean that just because you got a no today doesn't mean you can't change that no to, I get it now, over time. Okay? If we were in a perfect world, we would be having this conversation 20 years ago. But we're not. We're having it today. And so it takes time to change culture. And many of the challenges, the most difficult challenges that we're going to face in changing our institutions are changing the culture of our institutions, because of how we've evolved to be, and higher education in general is designed to resist change. It was purposely and intentionally designed that way because, why? Because, higher education, should not be changed on the whims of political pressure or what have you. So, we've created tenure systems, we've created very robust systems to maintain status quo. But we've gotten to the point where the culture now tends to reject movement in different directions or not support. What tends to happen now is you get this group of very motivated faculty and staff. They have a great idea. People ignore them for a little while, say, well, I'll let them go do their thing. They do great work, and then it goes nowhere. We have to change that environment so that as things go up the ladder, we're encouraging that kind of risk-taking. And yes, some days, and I was there, I had to look at some of my folks and say, that is great work. We can't get to it right now because we've got to focus on these other few things right now. And let's keep talking about it. Let's keep moving it forward. Let's keep finding ways to pilot it in our college and give you a chance to show us that it really can work. So we as leaders have to change the dialogue as well. And I know, our college presidents, our vice presidents, they're having these conversations. How do we change that culture? The cultural change is going to be the biggest shift we need to make. I've been there. I've sat in a room full of well-intentioned faculty, had my very talented director of research sit there and provide data to those faculty that clearly showed what we were doing today was hurting thousands of students, and we couldn't do anything about it. I've been in those frustrating situations, but I can tell you that from the time that conversation happened the first time to the time I left Long Beach City College, the conversation was very different. And we had many faculty in that department embracing that data, doing something about that data. So, just because you're right doesn't mean you're going to change anything. You may be right, but then it becomes incumbent upon all of us to help change the attitudes about what we're trying to communicate, and that's going to take time. So, I don't know if I answered your question specifically, but, unlike the military, we're supposed to have organizations that are much more dynamic and diverse. We should be putting responsibility and authority in the hands of those who are closest to our students. And we have to get more comfortable with that and allowing for the kind of risk-taking that you're talking about. That happens well at some colleges. That doesn't happen very well at others. But we collectively have to encourage that kind of behavior. And I will be doing my best talking to Board of Trustees about what kind of college president they should be hiring, what kind of skills, talents, and that really we require to do this work. I will be talking to the faculty leadership and encouraging them to talk to local senates about what kind of behavior we should be encouraging. And I think if we all do that, we will get there collectively. And we will give people who are trying to do this work a much better opportunity to get it off the ground.
We have 3 microphones out, so we're going to go 1. Where's the second one? 2, and then 3. So we have 4. Did you just ask a question?
No, I've been waiting here for a while with it, though.
Oh, okay. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. We have 3 microphones. If we want to take 4, what we need to do is keep the answers clipped and your questions clipped so we can stay on.
I think this is the... thank you.
I noticed she talked about the answer first.
I think that's a good idea.
I think this is probably an appropriate follow-on question. So I first want to say thank you. This is great leadership. Everything you're saying, we're all nodding. It's right on. I'm a big believer that pathways can take us forward, transform our colleges. But I do worry that after 3 or 4 years, we could be right here still. And the thing that gets in the way, you've talked about this a little bit, it's culture. It's also the challenges of shared governance and the challenges of collective bargaining and legislation. Is there any thought to a task force of experienced leaders like Sonia and you, giving people a guidebook, a playbook for how to move forward with civility and break down some of the stuff that can make us fail, that will slow it down? And so what is there a plan for that?
I have a few faculty colleagues who wish that I would have had a playbook for civility, but as I always argued, at the end of the day, this is about the student. This is not about me winning or losing an argument. So one of the things that we're trying to do is improve the professional development of college leaders across the board in order to do this work. And that requires college leaders who can convene people to have courageous conversations, focus on data, and move the agenda along. Are all those leaders in the position we need them to be today? No. So that is still going to be sometimes difficult to do because civility doesn't always win the day in some of these conversations. But over time, we have to have a consistent push. So yes, I mean, if this is, and I can think of many, many initiatives that came and went. This is not an initiative. This is a change in attitude, a change in culture, a change in expectation. And from my perspective, I don't see it going back. It will only go forward. And some people can say, well, you know, when the new governor comes in, we'll have a different perspective. You know, I can tell you that the three top candidates for governor, they're going to put this on steroids. So, particularly if it's Gavin. So, we ain't seen nothing yet. So we've got to take this opportunity to prepare ourselves for those changes. And we're going to try to do as much as possible to support good professional development at all levels and hope that we can bring people along that way. And then as we hire new leaders, think hard about the kinds of skills and talents we need them to bring to the table in order to do this work. Who's next?
Right here. Right here.
Okay.
First, Chancellor, thank you for the opportunity to access this $150 million to begin the initiative. As you point out, once we've done the work of planning and imagining the future, then, of course, as you say, we have to work with existing resources. And when you look at where we spend our money and time, a great deal of that goes into curriculum development. And we do a great deal of good work amongst the faculty, creating those ideas and moving programs forward. Unfortunately, as you're aware, that we have really a three-part approval process, and part of that lies with the Chancellor's office. So whether it's credit or non-credit programming, as we begin to try and streamline and really move towards a more effective system of distributing curriculum, aligning curriculum, what's your vision for how we basically accelerate the approval process?
Well, for those of you who don't religiously tune into the Board of Governor meetings, the first reading of the first Title V changes to change the curriculum approval process for credit courses went through the last Board of Governors meeting. So it'll come back for action at the next Board of Governors meeting, and that will be done. It is my intent to get the Chancellor's office out of the business of reviewing and approving your curriculum. Okay, so, and I say that for two reasons. One is because it's easy to blame the Chancellor's office for why we don't do what we're supposed to do. Okay, we're taking that excuse out. Okay, two, it is your responsibility at the local level to hold yourselves accountable to your community and to develop good curriculum that supports the needs of your community. So we're going to have, you know, there's going to be some more accountability that follows that change. And so I have great confidence in our 113 colleges that you will do the right thing. You know, why are we in where we're at? Because one or two colleges at some point in time strayed off the path. And will that still happen? Yes. I've got my eye on a few colleges right now. But we shouldn't punish all 113 for the mistakes of a few. So we will come back to the non-credit curriculum process next.
So we've got time for two more questions. So one right here and then right here, real quick.
Good morning, Chancellor. My name is Armida Ornelas from East Los Angeles College.
All right.
Really want to first thank you for all your support. And, you know, when you spoke about your luck going through our system, that really resonated. I think a lot of us feel lucky, and you're absolutely right that it shouldn't fall on luck. All of our students deserve a right to make it through our systems. What I wanted to speak to, though, is we're all, you know, we're grateful that there's so much support. There's strong workforce, there's equity, there's SSSP, there's guided pathways. And it's not only about access, it's about outcomes.
Yes.
But the outcomes is causing, at least a lot of us, a lot of anxiety in terms of, you know, the funding is linked to making sure you're meeting that equity gap, making sure you find employment with your strong workforce dollars. Is there discussion on allowing the colleges some wiggle room for that trial and error so that alleviate some of that anxiety in terms of meeting those outcomes. There's so much out there, so much expectation. We want to get there, but it's going to take us a little bit.
So, two answers to that question. The answer is yes, certainly. We don't expect you to suddenly turn around 20 years of outcomes in 1 or 2 years. But what we do expect is that you're going to make progress. So there should always be a little bit of anxiety in all of us about what we're trying to accomplish, because it is that important. It is that urgent. We have to embrace the urgency of now. Okay, we have to do what we need to do now. So that doesn't mean that we don't expect you to take time to gear up your organization or your program or your initiative to turn around those outcomes. But we want to see you putting that into action today. And yes, there is wiggle room for experimentation. And as we look at these funding formulas, we want to take that into consideration. But at the end of the day, if Bakersfield is doing a fabulous job at moving the needle on the community that it serves, we should be able to reward Bakersfield College. If ELAC and President Martinez and you all are doing great work, if you guys are struggling to move the needle on one particular segment of your population, we need to continue to reward and support that. But if it's not moving, then we have to have the ability to ask the question, why? And what do we need to do different at ELAC? And the best place to go for that answer is you all. So there has to be a sense of urgency in this work, and there has to be some accountability in this work, because if we don't change the outcomes, we are not going to get this kind of investment the next time around. And that keeps me up at night, just as it should keep you up at night, because I don't want to see your work ever get less valued, because it is more valued today than it has ever been, certainly in my time in the community colleges.
One more question for Chancellor Oakley. Red button on the bottom. Get another microphone. Here.
Oh.
Okay, you're good.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right.
Good morning. As a data geek, I was kind of picking up on the theme of data in your talk this morning. So
Very
I just
perceptive.
go figure. Just because it is such a foundational element for decision making to move this, initiative forward, this framework forward for change, and also later on to provide evidence in justification for the investment being spent on what we're doing. Just curious then if there's going to be specific support for the data and technology, both personnel and systems, to be able to do that, especially for districts and colleges who might be a little bit more financially challenged and haven't been able to make that investment yet.
That's a great question, because guided pathways will not work on your campus or in this system if we don't have the data infrastructure in place to really support the kinds of data analysis and questions and evaluation that we need to have. Some colleges have great resources. I was fortunate at Long Beach. We have, we had one of the better IR staffs in the state, and we intentionally invested in it because we knew we were going to need it. Some colleges are not there. Some colleges are not going to get there anytime soon. So the answer is yes. There is a lot of thought going into how do we create a level playing field for all colleges so that colleges of the Siskiyous and Long Beach City College have an equal opportunity to look at data, the key performance indicators that you all, particularly the 20 colleges that are working on this now, will learn about. So we are building a module that will have these key performance indicators available for all 113 colleges. So regardless of whether you're you have a big IR staff or no IR staff, you will have access to data that gives you good information about how your students are progressing. So that's one answer. The other is, we're going to try to leverage the economy of scale of 113 colleges. We have a great habit of each of us trying to buy our own software package or our own solution, and then, we've just wasted all this money. So we need to look at regionalizing more. We need to look at opportunities. I would tell this to my colleagues, the college presidents, I would hold off on any major purchases of software packages, and I'm sorry if there are vendors in this room, until we have an opportunity to roll out this module for the KPIs, and we have an opportunity to look at other solutions that we could provide the whole system. And then from there, if colleges want to add on to that capacity, it's all on you. It's your money. But we want to create that capacity. And then the other thing that we're going to do is to build capacity in the Chancellor's office to provide technical assistance, coaching to colleges to help with this, train and support your data folks, your leadership on how to understand the data and how to act on the data. So we will provide that support. That's part of the $150 million. That's part of the effort that we're doing in the Chancellor's Office Foundation. We're expanding that footprint, and we're bringing in some great talent. I'm proud to announce today, not many of you pay attention to the staff in the former White House, but we're bringing on Ajita Menon, who worked for many, many, many years in the White House under President Obama, to help us with things like looking at the financial aid model and how does it support guided pathways, to look at regulations and things like that. So we're going to continue to bring on that capacity to help you all have that expertise available through the Chancellor's Office for those colleges who can't afford it or who don't have access depending on where you're at in the state.
So thank you all for your questions and participation. We want to thank Chancellor Oakley for his leadership.